Okay, you good to go, brother?
Yeah, man. Ready to rock and
Awesome.
roll.
Welcome back to the Open Up Podcast, everyone. It's episode 59 with Wayne McMurtie, founder of Run for Resilience. Brother, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Hey, thanks for having me, Lockie. It's a great opportunity and it's a privilege.
Um, Straight off the bat, can you describe yourself for us as a man and as a human?
As a man, oh Jesus, I don't know about being a human. No, hey, look, I think I'm no different to most other people. To be completely frank, I believe that we all have a purpose on the planet. We don't always understand what that is, and sometimes it takes a little while to figure that out. Some people never do. And if you don't accept that you have to be doing continual learning and on a journey to become better each day, then you're really not going to achieve what you're meant to achieve. And that's not a bad thing. Some people just don't want to. So I guess, as a man, I want to be able to do what's right, and be a positive influence, to those around me, and hopefully be able to make some changes in someone's life that's going to help them, overcome whatever their troubles might be. As a human, I guess it's kind of all the same thing. Just do right by other people, and if someone doesn't do right by you, don't lose your shit. Just let's accept that that's their negativity or that's their view of the world. Keep moving
Powerful,
forward.
man. Now, I mentioned Run for Resilience, which is something you've started. Can you give people who aren't aware of what that is a quick breakdown of it?
Yeah. There's no way to actually do it quickly though. Now, look, last year in September, actually, it was August. I was thinking that I needed to do something that was pretty phenomenal. I didn't really know what that was. And in May last year, so just before that, I was in Bali and I did the Bali Hope Ultra, which was 84 Ks across the island. And that was basically organised by a bloke called Tom Hickman, and he brought together, it ended up being 13 people from around the world who were all passionate about a cause. And that cause was putting kids through school. So there were the kids in Bali, Indonesia, who are, in lower socioeconomic. So basically, actually, these kids were all living in poverty, and they couldn't go to school. So the intention was that we would all run across the island, spend a week together to create an amazing community. And while we were there, we'd raise funds to help get these kids through school. So we ended up raising enough money to put 100 kids through their entire primary school education. And that's completely changing the dynamics of a village, and it's changing a village from an environment of poverty into one where that there's actual, a hope for the future, and that over time will hopefully make it that they're actually an abundant community. So that sparked something in me, and I'm like, look, I've got to be able to do something that's going to help recreate that. And as an Army veteran, I wanted to do something that was based around that space. So then Run for Resilience actually came about from me going, I've got to do something and I have to make it big. So I thought, where can I run? Then I went into the RSL in Mackay, and I saw there was a coffee table book about the troop train reenactment that they did in 2015. Now, in 2015, they reenacted the 1914 troop train that went from Winton to Brisbane, and that route was was 1,500 k's. So they recruited troops through central West Queensland all the way through to Brisbane, dropped them off in Brisbane, they trained up and then went off to war. And those guys actually ended up in Gallipoli. So essentially I thought, you know what, I can run that route. I can run from Winton to Brisbane. And I thought, yeah, that'd be great. But then I went, hang on a minute, it's the centenary of Armistice. Armistice is about the end of the war. It's about bringing everybody home. And it was about, reconnecting people with their families and community. And I thought, that's actually what I want to do. So instead of going from Winton to Brisbane, I went from Brisbane. Instead of going from Winton to Brisbane, I went from Brisbane to Winton, so I reversed it, and it ended up being about the journey home back from war and finding resilience. So I thought that's a really good idea. Anyway, so I started on the 1st of September. 22 days later, I finished 1,500 Ks. Wow. It was pretty brutal. A lot of fun, met a lot of great people, but it was a complete success. Even though I had 3 weeks to organise it, and then 3 weeks to run it. Everywhere we went, it was really well accepted, really well received. Everyone loved it. Excuse me. And we connected with so many veterans. We heard so many stories. We heard, just random strangers stopped on the side of the road for a chat, and it was just amazing. It was really great. So I thought, I can continue to do this. I just need to find something that has a significant military route and or a connection to the military and go and run it. So it just sort of spawned from there.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I've got to ask you about that because obviously doing something like that, having 3 weeks to prepare and then 3 weeks to run it, obviously like you have your purpose for that 6 weeks. What was it like when that 6 weeks ended?
I slept for 2 weeks. No, so after we finished in Winton, we actually had another week. So we went back to Mackay. We had a reception in Mackay, and then we had to get back up to Cairns because that's where we actually started the road journey from Cairns because that's where my sister and the support crew came from. So we ended up back there. So I didn't actually stop until after I got back to Mackay after Cairns. And then, so it was about a week and a half later, I got back to Mackay and I literally just didn't move any further than the couch or the bed. It was couch or bed, for 2 weeks. It was brutal. Hey, the come down was tough. It was tougher than I kind of realized. And it actually made me realize that it was just like returning home from an operation or a deployment.
Wow.
You spend so much time completely engrossed in what you're doing. There's nothing outside of that little bubble.
Yeah.
You have so much purpose and direction. You have your mission, you have your team. And then you come home from deployment, and this is obviously contemporary veterans. You come home from deployment and there's this vacuum. And there's such a change from what was normal to what is normal that it's like a massive culture shock. For me, it was actually more just physical and mental fatigue because I had been going for so long. But the same things that happen when you return from a deployment or something, and actually even if you're not military, from anything significant in your life, people say they have holiday blues when they get home from a 2-week holiday, and it's like, it's the same thing. Really, it is. It's just such a shift. And so, I struggled a lot more than I thought I would. And it took me probably 4 weeks to start getting over that slump. So I slept for 2 weeks, had 2 weeks of just being a complete zombie, no energy, it was I really isolated myself. And then getting too far down the rabbit hole here, got to get back out again and start doing stuff. Yeah. So I got back into it, but it's really great to, I guess, to be able to share that because everyone does go through that and there's always a way to overcome it. You've just got to be aware of it. Often we're not aware of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I mean, awareness precedes change. So I'm grateful that people like you are coming on and sharing stories like this. You spoke a little bit about like being a veteran and being of service and deployments. Did you want to run us through the story that you're here to share?
Yeah, for sure. So I joined the reserves in 97, I think, as a reserves as a reserve soldier over here in Perth. And then in 99, I transferred to the regular army, and it wasn't because that's something that I'd always wanted to do specifically, but it was something that I kind of figured would be a good thing to do. It was something that I thought, you know what, here's a way to go and do something that's a bit of an adventure. So let's go and do it. The typical story that you probably get.
Yeah.
So I was 21 when I joined the regular army, went over to Brisbane, and then we deployed to East Timor. Over the course of my career, I deployed 4 times in total, twice to East Timor, twice to Afghanistan. I started as the infantry soldier, transferred to medical corps, and that was because I decided that I needed to be able to do something to help people, and I saw that being a medic was a really great opportunity to do that. And then, so over the course of the rest of my career, bounced around and did a few other things, had a lot of fun, did a lot of good things that helped a lot of people. But it wasn't until 2009 on my second tour to Afghanistan that I started to sort of have some issues. So we had a few really nasty incidences. So we were out in a forward operating base, an FOB, and we were there. There was about 20 Australians, and then another, what were there? There probably would have been 100 or so Afghani National Army guys. So we were there training them. We were mentoring them how to become better soldiers. And basically where we were, it was in a place called the Chora Valley, and that was always traditionally a really dangerous place, a bit of a hotspot for Taliban and insurgent activity. And so every couple of days, a local would come in that was shot or blown up, as an effect of an IED or a mine. And, as a medic, as the lead medic for the guys in that area, it was generally my responsibility to sort of, take care of them, take the lead. There wasn't so there was one other medic there, but he was often out doing patrols. And so then it was my responsibility to look after anyone that was sick or injured that came into the base. And yeah, so you kind of just get into a routine of people in all sorts of strife coming in. Most of the time it was local. So, I mean, it sounds harsh, but luckily it wasn't, our guys. It's harder when you're living and breathing in the space with people and you know everything about them. When something really bad happens, to one of your mates, it's much more difficult. So anyway, there was always that happening. Everything from kids to old men. We would never see any women. We'd occasionally see a young girl, but just the way that the Afghani culture is, the women would and other older girls would just be sent somewhere else to be looked after until they generally died, because just the way that they value life. To say it that way is a bit rough, but anyway. So basically there was one really big incident where there was an IED in a marketplace, and there was it was a guy who was wearing a suicide vest, and he blew himself up to take out an Afghan National Army patrol that was going through the marketplace. But as you can imagine, in a marketplace, it was full of people, and it was pretty much in the middle of market time. So there was just this massive explosion, because it was only like 500 meters sort of down the road from where we were. And it's like, holy hell, what's going on? Initially, it's like, all right, people are dropping bombs on us again, because we get mortared, every now and then. And so it's like, well, that's all cool. It's gone off somewhere. Let's go and make sure everyone's okay. Everyone came out, and it's like, all right, it wasn't on the base. So what was it? And then we started getting chatter that, someone had blown themselves up in the marketplace. And then next minute, you just started getting injured and dead, rocking through up to the front gate. And so sort of had to mobilize the guys that were there that were going to help me. So we had people who were first aid trained or advanced first aid trained, and they were part of an emergency reaction team that would help me treating people. So in a mass casualty event like this, you need as many hands as you can who have some basic training, and then they would do the bulk of the looking after, whereas then I went around and I triaged everyone, decided who needed to go off for evacuation first, and then sort of who we could manage on site, and then who we could then transport by road back to somewhere else to get support.
That's a lot of responsibility in that sort of situation when you're in that sort of state of mind, that fight or flight. I guess were you taught how to deal with that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
You know, you're taught through your military training to just continually do drills, and so that then things just become, you know, you put your shoes on every day and tie your laces up. You don't really think about it.
Okay.
So you get taught things that just become drills, and you don't think about it. It becomes automatic. That's a really good thing because you've got that muscle memory that will help you to just do it without thinking. However, you know, there's only so much exposure to injuries or to injured people that you can simulate. When it actually becomes real life, it's a whole different kettle of fish, because there's no way that you can simulate just the smells, the noises, and all of that.
Yeah.
And as you go through a whole bunch of, you know, if this then what sort of scenarios in training, and you do get given psychological tools to help manage it, but you know, often it's not until it actually happens that you go, holy shit. So anyway, we dealt with that situation, and we managed to get everyone off. No one died. So no further deaths occurred for people that were with us. We got them all out to more advanced medical care. Some people did pass away later, but you know, it wasn't on our watch, so to speak. And there's some kind of funny little stories I can tell about it, but it's probably not appropriate. But you know, sort of, I guess that dark humor that you have in those sorts of scenarios, and just ways, coping mechanisms that you have, and so that you can engage with other people while you're doing it to take the edge off the severity. Otherwise, yeah, if you're too morbid about it when it's happening, you're probably not going to cope so well. Anyway, so that was kind of the biggest one. There was a whole bunch of other smaller ones. There was other times where a vehicle had been blown up, and so all the people had been rocked in or brought in. You know, and yeah, it sort of all just built up. I went home on Rockall, so basically you got a period of leave each deployment out of country for a couple of weeks, and that was not too long after the event. Now, the whole progress, or the whole process of getting out of country to go on leave was really not set up the best, and it was very reliant on regular transport. You know, regular planes coming in and out and doing bits and bobs, and it wasn't really anyone's fault, but it dragged out longer than it should have. Then that impacted on the time that we actually ended up having out of country. And then by the time we got back, we were a couple of days late. Things had just gone sort of haywire, and I essentially had a breakdown while I was out of country, just because of the transition from one environment to the other, the offloading of responsibilities, the letting down of guard, you know, dropping your barriers when you're going back somewhere else. So essentially it was at that point where I'm like, you know, I just tapped out. And dealing with that was actually probably one of the toughest things, because I went from I'm just going away on holiday for a couple of weeks to I can't go back. And then dealing with the guilt of, you know, I'm not going back, and I'm not going to go and continue to give the support to my mates. You know, I'm letting my team down. So there's a lot of that to deal with. And then a whole bunch of other stuff. And anyway, it progressed into a diagnosis of PTSD. And, you know, took quite a long time to sort of, you know, really sort of get down to it, or not down to actually manage it and figure out what was going on. And while the system was set up to try and help, the system wasn't set up very well. And a lot of the case at that time, it's changed a lot now, because this was in 2009, 2010. A lot of the systems are now more robust, and they do a lot better work in helping people return from overseas. But back then, it was not entirely the best. People just didn't know how to manage psychological injuries.
Okay.
They knew how to manage physical, but not so much the psychological. And then, over the next few years, it was me. I was just focused on trying to get out of the army. I just had enough. And so that's kind of all it was. I just said the things that I had to say to get out. And being a medic, I kind of knew what I needed to do and say to be able to let them give me a tick in the box to actually get out. In hindsight, I pushed it too quick. I should have stayed in, but a lot of people do that. And it ended up being I did get out. And that was in 2011. So,
do you feel like you pushed it too quick because of that guilt? Because you knew you weren't going back? Did you feel like a fraud, like still being a part of that with that guilt, knowing that you weren't going to go back?
No, I don't think that was the case. I think it was more just I just don't want to be in this environment anymore. At the time it was I just need to change, a change of environment. I need to just get away from all of that, because everything that we were doing was always then basically I got put into a position where I was training other people to get ready to go overseas. So, while I had a lot of great experience in dealing with things that go wrong overseas, I was continually, like every day, back in the workplace, teaching other people what to expect to go overseas. And it was probably more the fact that I just kept getting that continual exposure to, scenarios that people were going to, find. And that just kept bringing up, everything that happened overseas for me. And that just sort of continual process of bringing it up and not really actually dealing with it consciously. You said before about awareness coming before change. I was aware of it, of what I was seeing, but I didn't know how to change it. I didn't know how to overcome it. And so, I was just continually reliving it without actually processing it properly.
Wow. That's hard to deal with, man. Like, how long was it between returning home from service and being diagnosed?
It wasn't long. It was only really a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But because I came home and stayed home so suddenly, it was basically, there's an issue. I pretty much, honestly, like I got off the plane in Townsville and went straight to the army doctor and said, something's not right, So it was almost straight away that they said, okay, this is what it was. The official diagnosis took a little while, but.
Okay. And what does a PTSD? How does it impact you? Because I guess most people, when they think PTSD, especially with servicemen, they assume like nightmares or visions or something like that. How does it impact you?
Yeah, I mean, I've processed it enough now that it's not a huge impact on my life. It's something that's always there. It's not something you can get over. Back when it first happened, it was a lot of reliving images. So you'd be seeing images, flashbacks, so to speak. Nightmares. You would just be. There was times where it was really tough just to go out to shopping centres, because I did deal with a lot of kids in a lot of trauma while I was overseas. It was really tough going past schools or being around kids in shopping centres. Or there was a time in Townsville not long after I got back, before I really knew what was 100% going on and how to deal with it. I went to my girlfriend's at the time's niece had a school fete, so we went along to that, and it was a normal school fete. If you look at any of them, it's just kids running around, a few stalls, and some jumping castles, and nothing too crazy. But I sort of went there, and I was just a little bit on edge, and then all the kids running around and screaming, and just kids having fun. That got really tough. It was making the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I just ended up, getting in the car and going home. Wow. And it's just like, I've got to go. And I just left.
And why being in that environment, constantly having to relive those sort of scenarios when you're playing it out for people who are going overseas soon, can understand how that impacted you, or negatively impacted you, why you wanted to get out of it if you had to experience that sort of shit in your own head.
Yeah. And it was without really understanding or really realizing. I mean, you get told, yep, these are what the symptoms are, and I knew what it all was, and I knew how it would play out, but I didn't. Knowing something and actually understanding it is completely different. And it was just a way that you have to figure it out. You have to figure these things out like anything. You can learn lessons from someone else, but until you learn your own lessons, you're not going to know.
I talked to anyone about it while you were, I guess, both overseas and after you had returned?
Yeah, overseas, we had the Padre and our MO come out and chat with us and everyone, and we had regular conversations, and we had a really great opportunity to talk to people about it. But it's the military culture being, you're tough, you can handle anything, boys don't cry sort of thing. You have a conversation and you go, yeah, it was tough seeing, dead bodies and kids and this and that. But you go, when they ask a question, are you okay? And it's like, well, yeah, I'm fine. It's easy to ask, are you okay? But you've got to understand that you need to be able to respond in an appropriate way, and not just be man and macho and say, oh, no, it's okay. Yep. You got to say, well, actually, really get down to it. But the other problem, I guess, there is in the military, you're deployed, you're overseas, you don't want to say something that people will look at as in, oh, you're weak, or what's wrong with you? We've got to take you out and send you somewhere else, because the last thing you want is to be taken out and sent somewhere else. Because if you're taken away from where you were, then you've got all those problems of having been taken away from your family. We were living and breathing 24/7 with the same group of people. We trained with them before we went. We were living in a very enclosed space with people, and that's all you knew every day. And so every time that one of your mates went outside the wire, it was like, fucking keep yourself safe. And you don't want someone to say you can't be there with your mates anymore. Yeah. So you would be guarded, and you would try not to say the wrong thing that would make someone think that you needed to be sent somewhere else, or something else happening or whatever.
Okay. Did you feel like you had to keep that sort of mask on, or that sort of wall up while you were at home?
To a degree, yeah. And again, it's the same sort of thing. There's only you can talk to some people about it, but you can't necessarily talk to others. I mean, it was really hard to talk with, family and friends who weren't in the military, because how do you tell someone about something when they have no concept about what it is? So that makes it difficult. My girlfriend at the time, she was in the army, and she was seeing everything that I went through, but I still found it hard to talk to her about it. Even though she had deployed, and she'd obviously been in the military for long enough that she knew what it was about. But being able to talk openly about what you're actually experiencing is hard. It makes it harder when you don't really know what you're experiencing, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
So you have
it hard to talk to her if she'd been in the same environment and was exposed to that sort of stuff?
I actually don't really know, to be honest. While she had deployed, they were completely different experiences. She was office based in a big base with a lot of people around, and not as much risk. There's always risk, don't get me wrong. Whereas I was in a very small base with only a handful of people, and we were every day faced with literal life or death. And yeah, I guess there was enough variation in it, and yeah, I could talk to her about some stuff, but it was really hard to. It's probably more hard to actually just verbalize what it is. You can say, yeah, I was there and this happened to this person, and I felt really shit about it. But saying it in an emotionally, saying it in a coherent way that's understandable, that allows the emotion to be portrayed where it made sense, as opposed to just breaking down and crying. Because, yeah, I mean, you start talking about it and sometimes you did just break down and cry. And then that person has no idea how to deal with it because, you're crying. How do you make someone who's crying feel better or stop crying?
Yeah. And that's I think that's one of the big risks about, as much as I love Are You Okay? And I think they're doing amazing things, I think that's one of the big risks about telling everyone to ask, are you okay? Because when you ask it, you've got to be ready for that conversation.
Yeah.
If you make that person feel like them sharing, they're not in a safe place to share it. They're going to think, oh, that's shit, I can't talk about this to anyone.
Yeah. It makes it hard, yeah. But I mean, the whole... Sorry.
So you go away, you have like this horrific situation or event that you have to deal with. You come back, you're diagnosed, and then I think you said a few years later you finally leave the army environment. Is that right?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed in 2009, and then I left. I actually had long service leave, so I did manage to get out and take long service leave early, and get out of the environment. So by using that, so I didn't technically get out until May 2011, but I did 12 months of long service leave, half paid. So in that time, I actually had a job. So the funny story is that most of the guys that were medics on the deployment got out after they got back. So there was basically a period of about 12 months where 9 of us were all, about 7 of the 9 all got out, sort of in that 12 months after the main body got back. And then we all got jobs. We all got a job pretty much with the same company. And so we all went and worked over in Papua New Guinea. And we were out on a oil and gas or gas exploration project. So we were out in the middle of the jungle with a handful of people all working together. We set it up, basically the medical side of the house, how we knew how to run things. And so it was actually a really great environment. We had all our mates, we were all working together. We all had, everything that we needed. It was just like, it was really structured. It was a really great roster. We're doing month on, month off. So that was cool. And yeah, we rotated, we all worked together. We were flying around in choppers, walking around in the jungle. The great thing was that there was just no one shooting at us. We were wearing high vis instead of cams. It was just like the military, but without the military, bullshit, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so that was a great transition for us to actually then be able to move on. And that was a lot of fun. It was a really great opportunity for us because it helped us to go from the military into civilian, because we still had that team and that structure around us. After a couple of years there, then it just sort of started, okay, this is enough of this. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, living overseas for half the year, always in the middle of nowhere with nothing. It's like, okay, it's lost its excitement. And so then, we all sort of started drifting off. The contract ended and, things changed. So, that initial transition was actually really good. But I think what it did in hindsight was that it actually prolonged, prolonged the inevitable of having to actually separate from that military family.
Yeah.
So we went from, being with your mates, doing everything together, to then that job ended and we went elsewhere, and then we all kind of just really separated. And so you lost that family connection and that bond. People end up just getting caught up in their own lives, and then you just lose track of each other. Yeah. And sure, you can just jump on the phone and have a chat, and we still do, but there wasn't that tribal closeness anymore.
Okay. Yeah. So knowing everything that you've been through, like while overseas, and then coming back having PTSD, and then having to relive these sort of scenarios, and then having this elongated period where you slowly transition back into being a civilian, and then finally lose that sort of structure and that friends group. How have you managed to either like deal with, process, or overcome those sort of struggles? Because that's a lot to deal with, man.
It is, yeah. I mean, while I was in the military, you do a lot of training. And when I got out, when we were working in Papua New Guinea, we had the opportunity to do a lot of training. There was gyms. I actually set up a little gym in one of the camps we were at. So, every day I'd get out and I'd just smash the gym, go crazy, have a bit of fun. And that in itself was just a really great way to blow off some steam, to help process the thoughts. Now, at that time, I sort of didn't really understand any of that. I just knew that I wanted to keep fit. It was a good way to do it. So why not? It wasn't until I came back to Australia and I started working up in the Pilbara doing FIFO up there.
Yeah.
That I then met another ex-army bloke, and he was into running. And while I was always into running, it was only just 5 or 10 Ks, just training stuff. He's like, oh yeah, we in the running scene and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, oh, well, let's, we'll organize some runs and we'll go running and that sort of thing. So we started doing a bit more training that was more running specific. I started doing less gym specific stuff. And then, we'd go and do some 10K fun runs, and then it went to half marathons. And then I decided, well, I've done a half marathon or a couple of half marathons. I guess I should do a marathon. And so then the only marathon that was left, and this was it would have been in December 2013. I decided that I needed to do that full marathon, but the only one was a trail run, and it was a 46K trail marathon. So I'm like, oh, well, let's go and do that. So signed up for that one and went and did that and had a lot of fun, learned a lot of things, including 65-year-old women will quite easily beat you. And basically just got the running bug sort of from that point on. And then, my mate, he says like, well, hey, there's this 250K 6-day ultra marathon in the Simpson Desert in June next year. Do you want to do that? So I'm like, oh, I've run one marathon. Let's just go and do 6 days of running a marathon plus every day, and yeah, why not? We can do that. So then it was in that process of learning how to be able to do that over the next sort of 6 or 7 months, that I kind of just started running longer and longer distances and going out and just finding that the run was actually therapeutic. Didn't realize that it was therapeutic. It just happened.
Yeah.
And then at about this sort of same time, it wasn't at that exact same time. I was getting therapeutic value from the runs. That doesn't matter. It happened. It wasn't until the next year in 2015. So I was working FIFO for 2 years then, when the iron ore prices tanked and the company had to let go of a whole bunch of people. I was one of the guys that lost the job, so I was made redundant. And that was actually where I had a trigger that took me back to what happened in Afghanistan, coming back home at that stage, not going back, that separation I was in Anaconda when I got the phone call from my manager saying, "Don't come back to work next week."
Wow.
You know, so to get a phone call like that when you're just doing something, you know, it's crazy. They handled it completely wrong. Anyway, so that just really threw me off the rails, and I had sort of no idea how to deal with that, and that completely just sort of overlaps, and everything went backwards. I hadn't had any conscious coping mechanisms in place to deal with anything. I was just doing what I was considering a normal day-to-day life. I'd go running, and everything was in sort of balance, but I didn't have any conscious coping mechanisms. It wasn't until after that point where then I started running, I just basically went, you know what, I need to just go for a run. I felt that I couldn't stand to be around myself.
Okay.
So if I couldn't stand me, why would anyone else want to be around me? So I just ended up going running on my own and just doing longer and longer distances. And then I found that alone time was actually really beneficial in learning how to speak to myself and learning how to understand what I was going through to be able to then, sort of reconnect with other people.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like you sort of slowly increase your distance, and in a way, you're slowly getting yourself used to being alone.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
And then
you couldn't stand yourself. That was your thought process at the time.
Yeah.
Looking back now, do you have an understanding of why you thought that?
It all related back to coming home from Afghanistan and that guilt, of not going back. That, sort of, I guess, the whole I'm not good enough. So to have gotten a phone call from the manager while you're on break to say you're not coming back, it was very similar to coming back from Afghanistan and having, the GP saying, we don't think you should go back. And that sudden separation without having completed what you were doing.
Yeah.
When you think, you're doing a really great job and you have the best intentions for doing the things that you can for your dependency, the people that you're working with, because I was a medic out out in the Pilbara. And so it was like, well, what about all my patients? What about the people that come in and see me regularly that I work with, that I support? What's going to happen to them? And it's like, well, obviously I've been made redundant and not someone else because I'm not good enough. And so what's wrong with me? Thoughts cascade through your head and it just goes sort of haywire. Okay. Luckily I knew that, I just decided that going running was the best option. And that time alone was beneficial. But the most important thing out of all that was, yes, the running helped me helped me to spend time alone. But the trail running community is extremely supportive, and it's an amazing community. And when you go and do a long distance run, either as a group or in a race, you might be on your own for a long period of time, but someone will pass you, or you'll pass someone else, or you'll just run with someone for a short period of time, and you'll have a conversation with them where you get to have a really deep connection. Because essentially on the longer races, you're so fatigued that there's no more barriers. You just let it all out. You talk, they talk, you talk, and you say some weird shit. You might spend 10 minutes with someone, but you learn things about them that they haven't told other people, and vice versa. And so there's a really deep connection, and then off you go again. So you have that thing. I like to look at it as in, you go for a run with a group of people or in a race. You all have a specific mission on that day. So the race, let's just say it's 100 Ks. Most people will get that done, within a 24-hour period. Too easy. Off you go. everyone has that same mission. It's to finish the race. It's not necessarily to beat other people, because it's that competition within yourself. It's that challenge with yourself to push yourself through to see how far you can go. So each ultra marathon is a unique challenge. You could do the same one every year, but each time is going to be a different temperature, different weather. The course conditions are going to be different, and so each time it's uniquely different. And each time it's that unique challenge that you have to test yourself, and you have to overcome those obstacles. And while you're doing that, you're completely present and in the moment. You're aware of everything that's around you. You're not worrying about next week's job. You're not worrying about that bill that you have to pay. You're just worrying about one foot in front of the other, getting to the finish line. But everybody else is in exactly the same boat. Everyone else has that same focus. And for me, I believe that it's much like in the military, how everyone was on a mission. They all had that same goal. They all wanted to get to that same point. And, you're not alone. So that's why I really love traveling.
Yeah, it sounds like connection and community is a big part of what you need for sustenance.
Yes.
And one of the best things I picked up about you talking about this ultra running or these longer marathons is the fact that it's you against you. And yes, you said it's like a mission, but this time it's only you who gets to decide whether you complete it or not, because obviously with Afghanistan and with being the medic up in the Pilbara, that got cut short by someone else. And so with these marathons, it's like a cool way of you sort of, I guess, completing something or giving like that finalization to something.
Yeah, for sure. It is. There was one ultra marathon, the first time that I didn't finish, I had a DNF. That was just, at the time I physically was not capable, so it was fine. But the first DNF is always the hardest. And I was tearing myself up about it for like 6 months afterwards. I was just like blaming myself and everything. And I realized afterwards, sort of at about that 6 month point, I thought, why am I making my life so miserable just obsessing about that DNF? And then I thought, fuck me, excuse the French. It was just like, it was just like coming back from Afghanistan and just like getting made redundant from the Pilbara, in that I beat myself up so much about it because of what happened, but I couldn't process the fact that I made that decision and it was my choice, regardless of whatever. And it was actually a good thing. And I went, you know what? A DNF isn't bad. It just means that right now you're not capable of doing it, but you've got the choice to pick yourself up and do it again. You can try it again. You can do another one, or you can beat yourself up and say that you're not good enough, when you can just go out and train more and become good enough.
That's some good advice for anyone who's struggling with beating themselves up.
Yeah, and that's something that I really loved about this whole thing. Like I said just before, each race is so uniquely individual and a challenge that one year you cannot finish it, the next year you can. The race that I just told you about, I've done it 4 times. I finished once, but after the first time I ran it, I didn't finish. The second time I ran it, I finished, and I did it. I did it within the time frame that you needed to get a belt buckle, so it was a time. And it was great. You've achieved a goal, right? The second 2 times the third and the fourth time that I did it, I didn't finish, but I did not beat myself up about it. I'm like, high five, Wayne. You got to X point and you've achieved something. You've still, and understanding that point in life is like every challenge that we face. If you beat yourself up and hate yourself for what you've done, you're not going to achieve. But if you go, you know what, I need to learn from this and move forward, then that's fine. So yeah, it's awesome to be able to understand that and hopefully, implement that same thought process through every other part of your life. It helps you make better decisions and, not get so beat up about the fact that you don't finish something.
Yeah. So you talked about the running and the sort of the fatigue that you go through, and then the, I guess, relinquishing of those barriers and you talking to people very openly while you're running. Talk about it giving you a sense of purpose and like you have a mission again. That sense of community while talking to those people and being constantly present while you run. Were there any other tips, tools, or tactics that you used to help you sort of deal with or overcome PTSD or what's eventuated from Afghanistan and the Pilbara?
Yeah, just I think the biggest thing with it was understanding after the first couple of years that the big thing about it was the fact that it was allowing me to be present and in the moment. And a lot of that had to actually just come to it came down to breathing. And so then I actually went and did yoga. I did a month-long yoga course to better understand that whole breathing process and how that worked. And then I actually went and also did at around about the same time freediving. And that's a lot to do with relaxation and being in the moment and breathing. So I think the biggest tool that I have is just breath work. And if people can understand that being mindful isn't woo-woo and it doesn't mean meditation and making your mind still, it's actually just be in the moment, sit there and breathe. And if your mind wanders, let it wander, go where it goes, but just always remember that where you are is in your body and that you're in the now. Because if you start breathing rapidly, then you have rapid thoughts and you get all crazy. But if you have a regular breath and you can feel the breath and you're thinking that you're just here and now, then it's going to help you to be centered and in the present.
That's awesome, man. Before we move on to a couple of questions and then wrap up, what lesson or advice could you give someone who's in a part of their life where they've had purpose for so long, like you had in Afghanistan or like you had in Papua New Guinea or in the Pilbara, and they're transitioning into a period of their life where they're not too sure what their purpose or their mission is?
Yeah. I think the best thing would be just do the things that either used to make you happy or still make you happy. Look at the activities that you really enjoy and just keep doing them, and then understand what it is that you enjoy about those activities, and then look at where you can find that same feeling or that same sense. You're not always going to understand exactly where you're meant to be. It took me quite a few years to figure out that the running space is where I needed to be. So it is about that journey. Don't stress too much that the fact that you don't know. Enjoy the journey. Let yourself not know for a little while. Just do the things that you like to do. Spend time with the people that you like. Get rid of the negative people in your life, and give yourself some time.
Awesome. That covers a couple of questions I was actually going to ask you. I guess knowing everything that you've been through, all that you've overcome, and all the stuff that you're still working through at the moment and what you're doing with Run for Resilience, what would you say the quality of your life is like now?
I would say the quality of my life now is better than it ever has been, to be honest. I'm grateful for the challenges that I've had now. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I wouldn't have said that. But, challenges in life help us grow. If we're not growing, we're just staying stagnant. If we have no challenges, then we're not changing, we're not growing, we're not becoming who we can be. If you just think of all the things, the challenges that you might have faced as a child, going to school and hating school and having to learn maths, and if you can remember early enough, just learning how to talk properly and being corrected all the time, that were challenges and you overcame them. If a little kid can learn how to talk and overcome that challenge, an adult who's been through, 10 or 12 years of education has a lot more tools that they can overcome. Our problems don't get easier. Our problems only get harder. We just get better tools to better handle them. And it's how we face those problems. If we do things to avoid them, which I have done, then you're not gonna grow or overcome. You're just gonna become good at avoiding. every now and then we do have to face our challenges. Everyone runs their own ultra marathon. It's just not always running. And if you can overcome, your own ultra marathon and get to the finish, then you've achieved something. And if every now and then you have a DNF, you get halfway through a project and you think, screw this, that's okay. Just get back on the horse and do it again.
That's awesome,
keep trying.
DNF, I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that for lessons.
Awesome.
What are you most grateful for right now?
I think I'm most grateful for just the support of the community around me.
That's awesome.
I have a lot of good friends who weren't in the military, who don't understand, but through ultra running, because they're all runners, through ultra running, they all have an understanding of what a challenge is.
Yeah. And
they've had to fight their own demons. I recently did a race where it was 350 Ks down on the Bibbulmun track. And we had people running from all walks of life, male, female, young, old, and everybody was facing their own challenges, but everybody was supporting each other. And while yes, you didn't want to come last and you wanted to beat other people, you also knew that at any time you were going to support each other. And when someone else finished, or when you finished, everyone was just there at the finish line, and it's such a supportive, amazing community. And so I'm grateful for that. If you can find your tribe, which is what a lot of people talk about these days, find your tribe and you've got it made. But that means you're going to have to go out and challenge yourself. So, don't avoid things. Just get out there and do it.
That's super cool, man. Last question. If you had the chance to put a message on a billboard where thousands of people would see it every day, what would that message be?
Oh, if I knew that. Wow. I think it would literally just be, face your challenges. Something along those lines. Just if you don't face up to what's challenging you, then you're not going to grow. It's going to be hard, but if you find your tribe, you can do it.
That's awesome, bro. That's a quote. Yeah. That's a quote and a half. Is that stolen or is that original?
Oh, I think I just made it up. I don't know.
Yes, nice.
I'm sure parts of it's stolen. I'll find your tribe part, but everyone just has to do that. Take ownership and just face up to the problems, and then find people that understand and that want to help you succeed, and you'll do it.
Awesome, brother. I guess to wrap up, I want to acknowledge you for taking the time to do this first, but more so, we met before this podcast had even come about, and so it's nice to see the growth and to see where you've gone now, doing what you're doing with Run for Resilience, 1,500 kilometers. Can't even imagine that. So power to you, brother. I'm glad that someone like you who's had your experiences is now going out and helping people with the same sort of stuff. So thanks for what you're doing, man.
Thanks, Lachlan, and I appreciate it. And kudos to you too for this podcast. What was it, 50? Was it 57?
59, this one.
59 episodes. That's crazy. That's amazing. You were talking about starting one and open up, way back. Well, it has been, a couple of years.
Yeah.
And to have 59 episodes now, that's phenomenal. So
yeah,
I think that's.
It took me working through my depression to start it. So we're finally there.
You got your mission now, so it's all good. Yeah. Purpose.
Thanks,
awesome.
my man. You have a good day, eh?
You too.
Appreciate
Thanks so much for having me.
Bye.
See ya.